question we could say that the gospel and the readings really today put to us is, what do I expect from God? That is the question that's there throughout the readings. What do I expect from God? What am I looking for? And we have this in our own experience. Anecdotally, we've all had experiences like this with people who perhaps have difficulties in living of the faith, of practicing the faith, because they have some past experience of God didn't deliver on something I needed. And so it could be a big deal, it could be a big thing, surely a traumatic thing. I mean, it's the death of a loved one that was not healed. And that was enough to say God did not deliver on what I needed. But it's certainly, as well, I've also encountered that it's be very trivial things. I know people who get upset at God, and I just say even angry at God because their sports team didn't win, right? It happens. And you kind of think, man, of all the things in the world, these things are so passing. But it happens, and it can happen to us as well. Things ultimately do not work out the way that I want them to work out. And so that's a recipe for disappointment in the pursuit of my faith, because I need God to do something for me. And we find this throughout the scriptures. As you read the scriptures, which I hope that you read every day of your life, we find it already in the book of Exodus, in that first reading, and the people grumbling against Moses and Aaron because they wanted something. They didn't like the way that God was freeing them. God had really, through mighty deeds, freed them from all-powerful Pharaoh and his chariots and charioteers. And now they were grumbling because there was not the food that they wanted. And they wanted meat, and they wanted this, and they wanted that. And it wasn't working out. And it's interesting because God does provide what they wanted. And it's almost like that's a pause. And you look at the time between that and the coming of Christ, the grumbling didn't stop. It's a lesson for us today as well. Sometimes we expect this mighty deed that God must do for me in the way that I want it, and it doesn't happen. And the fact is, the world is full of mighty deeds. If it were just for mighty deeds, we would all believe. There wouldn't be a single unbeliever out there, and our faith would be rock solid. It's enough to go to Lourdes and see all the crutches laying against the walls there of people who've been healed. Many of those scientifically proven, at least like 50 or something, that have been researched through and through, that somebody was healed from, and there is no scientific way to explain it. And that's one shrine among so many. That's one place. And yet, there are many unbelievers in France. You just have to see the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, right? It doesn't, by the mighty deed alone, it doesn't work. God continues to perform those mighty deeds, but there's something else. In the end, the people, as the gospel tells us, were going after him because there's something that they wanted to receive. They wanted to go ahead and take him away and make him king, but not as we would understand it, and certainly not the way that God would understand it. Jesus tells the crowd, "Amen, I say to you, you're looking for me not because you saw signs, but because you ate the loaves and were filled." And so he goes away. They do want to make him king, and in fact, Christ is king, but just not in the way that they think he's king. They want a king, like the Roman kings perhaps, or emperors, who would provide circus and bread, who could provide entertainment. To work for them, a king who would work for them. That is no king at all. A king that would satisfy what they wanted. In our lives, that can happen too. Yes, he's king, so serve me, king. And that can get into our lives. Even with our best efforts, sometimes it sneaks in there. We have the good intention to follow Christ, and all of a sudden these impure intentions get mixed in to the question that what do I expect from Christ? We got to make sure that is our expectation a problem-free life, that all my desires will be satisfied according to my criteria? Or is it going to be in his terms? And it's beautiful because as we go to what really we should expect, what we should expect from Christ, what we should expect from God, brothers and sisters, is nothing less than this: an encounter with him. What we should expect from God is an encounter, a true encounter with Jesus Christ. That we might know his heart, and see what is in there. And so we can look at this passage, and now we look at it totally different. We look at this passage as this man, Jesus Christ, who's God, who sees these people like sheep without a shepherd, and he provides for them. And as they want to go and make him king, and they're just saying, this is great, we get free food, his heart is broken a little bit. It suffers a little bit because they don't get me. We all know the sensation, the experience of not being understood. When you try to do good and people misunderstand you. I think we've all had that experience in some way or other. We're misunderstood when all that we had the best of intentions. Well, relate to the heart of Christ. He has the best of intentions, and he looks, and it burns his heart that he looks, and they don't get me. Then he sees the approval. How easy it would be for us if people want to praise us to say, well, you know what? I'm going to stick with what works. People like this. I'm going to give them more what they like. But he doesn't do that because he's not there to please them. Rather, he's seeking the only approval that matters, and that's that of the Father. That is, his food is to do the Father's will. What Jesus wants from us is that we might believe. He indeed is king. He is king on his terms. He hopes that we will encounter him, that we will believe in him, and that we will actually follow him. And we'll see this the next few Sundays as we continue reading from this passage from the gospel, what happens time after time. And we discover in the Gospel of John how like this builds up to a tension because Christ is trying to explain and he's not understood, but he insists on what his mission is, which eventually brings him to Jerusalem and brings him to strife even among the apostles. He is indeed a king, not a king to serve us with satisfying our whims, but he is a king who goes to battle. He is a king that hopes we will go to battle with him. And the battle is not outside. The battle he wants to go fight, the place where he wants to go fight this battle, it's in our hearts, in each one of us. That there in the heart he might reign, he might place his standard and declare that place his kingdom, the place where he dwells. And that moved by such an encounter, each one of us will go out and do the same. Go to battle with Christ in the world. I love walking around town, and Durham is a unique town. You're always getting used to Durham. And just the other day I was walking around, went to have dinner with some friends, and always wearing my collar. And I'm waiting. I'm actually kind of like, okay, say something, Durham, say something. Come at me. And it's been pretty tame. I think people say things more behind my back more than to my face. But I was going a crosswalk, and this couple's walking, and they're talking. And then the guy says really loud, and I don't believe in God, and just keeps walking. And I was like, all right, man, I'm praying for you. This is awesome. I got a reaction. And what God will do with that, I have no idea. But sometimes you go into places. I was in DC. I had finished my silent retreat, and I went to lunch with a Duke alum, Jonathan Amgott, and who's now a seminarian for the Diocese of Arlington. And we went to a little place there, and we're sitting there and talking, and this guy comes by, and he puts down his business card. He says, Father, here's my business card. Call me. I need to go to confession, and I want to go to confession with you. I had the disappointment. It's like, I'm actually passing through Alexandria, Virginia. I'm not staying there, but Jonathan was there, and I said, take the card, give it to one of the priests at the parish where he's serving, and yeah, let's connect this guy. Let's make sure this happened. As a priest, I do that in a very public way, but it's not just for the priest to do that. It's for all of us to make sure that kingdom is being extended. What we should expect from Christ is to have an encounter with him and that we follow him into battle. My battle is mine, your battle is yours. But Christ wants to conquer hearts. Hopefully he's conquered yours, and then to go out and we bring him with us in the different ways that we give witness to Christ so that he might conquer the hearts of so many others. What do I expect from God? He will feed us. He always does, especially in the Eucharist, in a magnificent way. That today, this moment of being fed in the Eucharist might be just that, an encounter with somebody who looks at me and loves me and wants to open up the treasures of his heart so that I might open my heart and he might go into my heart place his standard, establish his kingdom, and that I will carry it forward and expand it throughout the world.